Hello?
Hi, this is 911, okay?
Is this coming? Are you coming?
Yep, we're gonna get some help there. How long ago did this happen?
I had to jump out of the car.
How long ago did this happen?
Like 2 minutes ago, I had to run through the house. I'm in so much pain.
Tick 911 call is from the voice of Madison Nygaard. On April 16th, 2016, this 16-year-old is trying to find her way home from a party. She was walking late at night when a man in a silver van stopped and asked if she needed a ride. He seemed like a friendly guy. He asked if I needed a lift and I told him no, but asked to use his cell phone, she said. The man agreed to let Madison use his cell phone, but all she had to do was get into his vehicle. So she hopped into his van. She continues. Once inside, the man quickly rolled the van windows up and locked the doors, Madison recalled. I was crying, just begging him to stop the van, she said. I had no idea really just how dangerous this man was, she says. Moments later, Willis reached underneath his driver's seat and pulled out a gun. With her life on the line, Madison immediately opened the van door, leapt out, and ran. She ran to a nearby home, and police were called. Her testimony plays a vital role in solving the 2 infamous cold cases in Michigan. On that same month, a man named Jeffrey Willis was later charged with kidnapping and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of both women named Rebecca Bletch and Jessica Heeringa. Disclaimer. This program contains violent content which may be too intense for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome back to Killer Inside. Before we proceed, I uncovered cases based on an actual event and conspiracy theory. I do upload videos like this every Monday. If this is something that might interest you and you happen to like our story, it would be of great help if you would like and subscribe to this channel. It would mean a great deal to me. Thank you. Today, I will be taking you to Michigan. Michigan is a state in the Great Lakes region of the upper Midwestern United States, with a population of nearly 10 million and is the 10th largest state by population, the 11th largest by area. Its capital is Lansing, and its largest city is Detroit. Michigan's mojo comes from its beaches, forests, and small towns. Here are some best places to visit in Michigan. The Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, one of Michigan's unheralded national parks. Sleeping Bear Dunes spreads across 35 miles of prime Lake Michigan shoreline. The Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, this area of cliffs and caves shimmering with wild colors, is the Upper Peninsula's top site. The optics come from blue and green minerals that streak the red and yellow sandstone into an artist's palette of hues. Or Marquette, makes a perfect base. It's Upper Peninsula, the UP's largest town and an adventure sports hotspot. Locals ski, snowbike, and explore ice caves in winter, and kayak, rock climb, and mountain bike in summer. Now let's move into Muskegon Township. If you visit Muskegon, try going to Michigan's Adventure is a 250-acre amusement park in Muskegon County, about halfway between Muskegon and Whitehall. It features wooden and steel roller coasters, thrilling rides, gentle children's attractions, delicious snacks, and other appealing offerings for kids and adult. Or the Hackley and Hume Historic Site features the restored homes of Muskegon's most well-known lumber barons with outstanding wood carving, stained glass windows, and period furnishings, and the city where Jeffrey Willis lived. Now let's get to know Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey is a 46-year-old factory worker and father of 1. Jeffrey had no criminal record in the past. He also happened to own a mini silver Dodge Caravan. Ken Kolker, an investigative reporter, commented, "You know, this man took his grandpa to breakfast every weekend. even was known to be a bell ringer for the Salvation Army and has no criminal record. He said, "Who would have guessed that behind that mask is a cold-blooded killer?" April 26, 2013. Jessica Heringa, 25 years old, mother of a beautiful boy named Zevin, 3-year-old, disappeared while working at a gas station as an attendant in Norton Shores. The gas station was set to close at around 11 o'clock midnight. Detective Kasher said, "That night, she was in the process of closing down the gas station when the officers checked. Her purse was left there, all her personal belongings were left there, and found all of Jessica's own money and the cash in the station's register where they should be. We went out back and then we noticed a few things that were a little more suspicious to us." Kasher recalled the events by saying, "We saw was a spot of blood. On the top of that was what appeared to be a cover to a laser sight on a gun and 2 little watch batteries." He said, as Detective Kasher inspecting the crime scene, a woman who also worked at the gas station came forward. She happens to be the gas station manager. She then said that a man named Craig Harpster entered the gas station for some fuel at around 11:15 p.m. He tried to find someone in order to pay for his purchase, but was unable to do so. Realizing something was amiss, he then saw a van go behind the store, turn off its lights. He found it suspicious, so he turned around and came back. He said that the back hatch of the van was up and saw a male person shuffle something and shut the back hatch. He get into the van and then leave. Not real hurrying, but just leave. The potential customer immediately called 911 and the police arrived 15 minutes later, she said. This corroborates what Detective Kasher said earlier. Craig Harpster gave a pretty detailed description of the van and the man. It was a silver Dodge Caravan type of vehicle. White male, maybe around 40 years old and a heavier set. Investigators believe that Jessica was abducted that night. The initial suspicions of a robbery gone wrong went out the window when the authorities found all of Jessica's belongings, along with the detailed description from Harpster. Investigators have released a description of a silver minivan and a man seen in the area, and a task force has been working on the case. Norton Shores Police Chief Dan Shaw, whose department is leading the investigation, said, "Obviously the odds are not in our favor at this point. Typically, the longer the time goes, the less likely there is for a successful outcome. We hope to be on the outliers in that statistic, and we hope to bring her home. But that's not how we're addressing the case," Shaw added. "We keep telling ourselves every day that she is out there and we have to go find her." Investigators continue to conduct interviews and track tips, Shaw said. The reward for information in the case is more than $15,000. In an interview with Dakota Quayle Dyer, Jessica Heringa's fiancé and the father of their 3-year-old son said, "I have been keeping newspaper articles about the case for a scrapbook. I hope to use it one day as a way to explain to my son what happened to his mother," Quayle Dyer said. He continues to say, "Me and Zevin are hanging in there, I guess. He's really distraught. It's becoming harder on him." Her family and friends have continued to hold out hope she will be found safe, but the passing weeks make it harder to stay positive, and she still has not been found. Quayle Dyer said, "A year has passed, and on June 29th, 2014.
911, where is your emergency?
Corner of Riley Thompson and Automobile. We come up to this lady. She's laying in the road. I think she was hit by a car.
Okay, is she breathing?
She is breathing. She's got a head injury, and she's laying face down.
Another woman named Rebecca Bletch, 36 years old, married, and a mother of a 12-year-old daughter, is murdered. Apparently, she went out for a walk and a jogging on Automobile Road in Muskegon County. Rebecca had been shot 3 times in the head, and 2 of those shots appeared to beat from close range. The location when she is found was probably about a mile down the road from her house. Paramedics rushed to the scene. A female of that particular finding party was a nurse and immediately began to try and perform life-saving measures. Despite the nurse's efforts, by the time help arrives, the woman is gone. One of those responding personnel was familiar with the victim, and the victim had been her daughter's basketball coach. She recognized who she was. The people who rush into the scene has the assumption that she had been struck by a vehicle. But the paramedics saw a shocking discovery when they decided to move Becky's body into the ambulance. They commented that this is no hit and run. DJ Hilson of Muskegon County Prosecutor of Michigan has said, "When I arrived on the scene, I was briefed by the sheriff as to what they had found. On the one side of the roadway, we were able to collect her cell phone, a set of earbuds, and some sunglasses. In the middle of the roadway, we collected 1.22 caliber shell casing. On the other side of the roadway where the body was discovered, we had some bloodstains in that particular area, and investigators ultimately did find 2 more shell casings located in the grass ditch." The detective also recalls and said, "We thought that it was very weird that her stuff was piled up on the side of the road. Our initial thoughts were that somebody was trying to abduct her or take her somewhere," he said. Detectives turned their attention to Becky's husband, Kevin Bletch. The couple had been together for 18 years and has a daughter. In an interview with Kevin, the detective said, "During the initial talk, he had what would be expected of a response when you're notified that your spouse has just been killed. He was very upset and distraught. Most people said that they had a great relationship, but there were a few people that made allegations that there were affairs going on." He continues to say, "We also asked about his whereabouts, and he had told us that he went up to the property with his daughter, and that's where he was at the time when this occurred. Between cell phone records and then talking with people that had been up at the cabin, we were confident that he was not here at the time," says the detective. Jessica Josephson, Becky's sister, also heard about the missing 25-year-old Jessica Haringa. She commented, "They were 2 beautiful young women, you know. One goes missing and the other is dead. I couldn't help but question, is there something there with the 2 of them?" she said. A donation fund of $10,000 was made in catching Becky's killer. As more years go by, investigators still cannot crack either case. Then, on a spring morning, 3 years after Jessica Haringa went missing and 2 years after the murder of Rebecca Bletch, a 911 call comes in just after 8 a.m. on April 16, 2016. As we have heard earlier in a 911 call from Madison Nygaard, the teen who escaped a Muskegon County serial killer. On the day of her failed abduction, Madison made a full statement to the investigator. She told the police that the man was driving a silver minivan. Madison said, "I did think I might die," holding back her tears. Detective immediately tracked down the surveillance cameras near where she was abducted. In a surveillance camera outside of a blueberry farm, they happened to get an image of the silver minivan. They immediately get help from Secret Service, the detective said. They were able to compile a list of the VIN numbers of every vehicle that was manufactured to that spec, and from that list, they look for every one of those vans that was registered to someone in our area. He continues to say that the list of vans is narrowed down to 31. Weeks later, they locate one that appears to match the van in the surveillance footage. One of our investigators went out, and one of the vans that he checked was within 5 miles of where our home office is, and he called me and said, "I think I've got the van," he said. May 23, 2016. Willis was named a person of interest in the Haringa's case, who bore a resemblance to the vehicle who also tried to abduct Madison. The detective have tracked down Jeffrey Willis' silver minivan. A Dodge Caravan has been found parked outside of his house, later on the same day. Police contact Madison Nygaard. Hilson, a prosecutor, said. They put together what we call photo lineup and showed that 6-person array of photos to Madison, and Madison picked up Jeffrey Willis as the guy that had tried to abduct her on that day in April, and we were able to draft search warrants not only for the van itself, but also for the residence where Jeffrey lived, Hilson says. Madison said in an interview, "I recognized him immediately. The person I identified was Jeffrey Willis," Nygaard said. Police comb through Jeffrey Willis's home and silver van. They are stunned by what they find, the detective said. Inside the van, the crime lab located a toolbox. In the toolbox, there was also some related devices, restraint-type items commonly referred to as a and everything that somebody would need to commit that crime. Inside the kit, they also find a pair of gloves that are sent to the lab for testing, and that's not all. They located a Walther handgun, a box of CCI 22 ammunitions. It was a Walther P22. The detective said. They also found some syringes with liquid, a ball gag, chains, a mask, and a bar with wrist restraints in Willis's van. While inside Willis's house, a second team uncovers even more potential evidence. There were computer towers that were discovered. They had members of our state police computer crimes unit on hand who were able to do some previews. Also on his computer, police found tens of thousands of very violent videos depicting graphic abductions, torture, women, videos of necrophilia related, and some of them even depicted murder porn. Other items included a list of serial killers and stolen panties belonging to a co-worker from whom police said that Willis also stole the gun. Investigators also discovered hidden in one of the heating vents was a portable hard drive that had been obviously placed there so that it wouldn't be discovered. Police believe they have all they need to charge Jeffrey Willis with an attempted kidnapping. They make their arrest. While Jeffrey Willis is behind bars, forensic experts analyze the portable drive found at his home. They make a shocking discovery. Detectives said that. They found a folder on Willis's computer titled VIX VICS and with containing information related to Hiringa and Bletch, one that contained information from when Jessica Hiringa was kidnapped and another one that had information related to Rebecca Bletch's homicide. Within those two files, it contained a combination of different things. For articles related to their disappearances and deaths, the reward posters for both Rebecca and for Jessica. To have a break where it looks like we're actually going to have answers is just a huge relief. He confirms. Hilson also said, "It was clear to me that this particular van was a death van in the making. It was starting to come into focus that Mr. Willis was a serial killer," he said. After 3 years of dead ends, police believe they might have found the man responsible for Muskegon County's two most infamous cold cases. They were able to make a positive identification that it was the handgun that killed Rebecca Bletch, both by casing matches and bullet matches. May 25, 2016. Another prominent name in the case of Jessica Hiringa is that of Kevin Bloom, 47 years old, cousin of Jeffrey Willis. The former Michigan Department of Corrections prison guard in Muskegon Township was charged with lying to the police during a violent crime investigation. The charges were filed on June 21, 2016, as Bloom had apparently told investigators some things regarding Jessica's disappearance that were not made public, but later recanted. During the investigation of Bletch's case, Bloom said to the investigators on May 18th, "I had not seen Willis for about a year and had never seen Willis in possession of any handgun," he says. Also during that interview, he told police that Jeffrey Willis did not do it when talking about Hiringa's disappearance. But later, on June 17th, in another interview a month later, he told the police he had seen Willis with a gun on May 3rd or May 4th. Bloom said in this interview, "Willis contacted me on the night of the incident to come to a vacant home that once belonged to the latter's grandfather. When I arrived, I saw a woman with a head wound. She was tied down, and I also noticed she wasn't moving," he said. He further shared that she had apparently been sexually assaulted by Willis, who had reportedly used toys on the kidnapped woman. The duo thus wrapped her in a sheet and buried her along Sheridan Road. In fact, when he reached there, a hole had already been dug, and there were shovels to help them bury their victim. But later, he contradicted himself by admitting that the entire story was a lie when investigators pressed him on details that weren't adding up. Bloom was earlier placed on suspension from his job as a sergeant with the Michigan Department of Corrections. On Friday, August 26, 2016, Kevin Bloom has pleaded guilty to 2 charges of lying to police as a result of a 4-year felony. He did not argue against the charges of being an accessory to the crime. Investigators say Bloom lied to them during their investigation into the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa. Bloom told detectives that Willis killed Jessica, and Bloom helped take care of the body. Then he later said he made the story up. After a year, on November 27, 2017, he was found guilty of the same. His sentence included the time he had already served in the Muskegon County Jail since September 20th, 2016. However, he was required to wear a GPS tracking device for a year and was placed on probation for 5 years. In January 2019, the court decided that Bloom would have to wear the tracking device for at least 1 more year since Jessica's body had not been found. At present, he is seemingly still in Muskegon County, though his probation is likely to come to an end in January 2023. Matt J. Roberts, chief trial attorney for the Muskegon County Prosecutor's Office, said, "Bloom's guilty pleas don't necessarily change anything about the cases that involve Willis." "I don't know that it necessarily has a bearing on the Willis case," Roberts continues to say. Mr. Bloom continues to agree to be a part of the investigations. Both investigations are still active. Going back to the main antagonist, Jeffrey Willis. He was charged with kidnapping and murder in the Heeringa's case on September 20th, 2016. Although prosecutors did not reveal what evidence investigators have tying Willis to Heeringa. A year later, on October 16th, 2017, the trial for the murder to Rebecca Bletch begins with jury selection. Attorneys initially examined a pool of 125 potential jurors. 3 days later, on October 19th, 2017, jury selection was completed and opening statements in the trial were made. The prosecutor said, "At the time Bletch was murdered, not only did he intend to kill her, but he also intended to abduct her." Whereas the defense shifted the blame from Willis to Bloom. "We believe that Mr. Bloom had both the motive and the opportunity to do this shooting, and he is in fact the person that did it." During the trial of Jeffrey Willis, he takes the stand in his own defense. He starts by addressing the items found in the toolkit. He said, "That's kind of a funny story. My wife and I had purchased some toys and they were in the house, and my grandson, he got in there and brought me a pair of the handcuffs." He said. Hilson commented on this. He said, "This was where he thought his charm would win the jury over, that the jury would believe every word that he said. When he described that his grandson discovering he and his wife's toys and he tried to make a joke out of it," he said. But Jeffrey's wife denied it all. She said no, she says, while taking a stand for not having any knowledge of the toolkits or the toys Jeffrey possessed. Jessica, Becky's sister, also commented, "I remember when he took the stand so confident in himself, but it was just lie after lie. And I think he believed his own lies, but nobody else did. It was really hard to watch him," she said. When the prosecution cross-examines Jeffrey Willis, they point out contradictions in his statements. Willis initially told police he never met Madison Nygaard, but when confronted with the evidence, he claimed Madison entered his van on her own accord. "My final thoughts for this case. If someone has a fetish with something, I think the person should be responsible in handling this kind of entertainment. This will not only take a toll on that person's life, but this might also lead in causing suffering, deaths, and damage. Such example is Jeffrey's excessive addiction in watching violent videos depicting graphic abductions, videos of necrophilia related, and some of them even depicted. The consequences of compulsive use of this kind of entertainment typically manifests in the person's life. The primary consequences of compulsive porn tend to boil down to shame, mental health issues, relationship woes, emotional dependence that interferes with daily life, which leads to inability to function and dysfunction. A person may become dissatisfied with their own or may engage in risky behaviors, such as using or sometime the death of innocent people. Everything should be in moderate, I guess. I'm not here to judge, but if you think you are somewhat having this issue, or know someone, the person should seek intervention in the form of therapist. Some treatment strategies may involve psychotherapy, relationship counseling, medication, and lifestyle changes. To this day, Jeffrey Willis is serving his time at the maximum security Cotton Correctional Facility in Jackson County, Michigan, while it's said that Kevin Bloom's probation is likely to come to an end in January 2023. But I don't seem to find any news about his probation since January 2023 had passed. What do you think? Guilty or not? If you reach this far, it means that you have taken a liking of our story. I do appreciate that. This would be the end of our case for today. Let me know what you think about this case, or any thoughts about it. Just comment down below. Just a little reminder, I do upload every Monday and Friday. I hope you will be here until the next case, and together let's uncover some mysterious cases like this one. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. I couldn't thank you enough. By the way, if you feel something is bothering you, do not hesitate to ask for help or talk to someone who is mature enough to understand you. Always make the right choices so you won't regret it later on. Keep safe and be mindful of your surroundings. You'll never know if there's a killer inside.